Hey everybody, how's it going? So a lot of you have been asking me what do I think of this new right to repair stuff that's been going on in the UK regarding appliances. I apologize for not covering it sooner. I mentioned in a recent video that I would like to have organizations put together that do nothing but focus on right to repair advocacy full time. It's easier said than done. I'm actually putting together the team of people that are going to be doing this, from technicians to contacts in the industry to attorneys to people to write up FTC complaints for me. There's a lot of fun stuff that's in the works, and there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening over the next year and a half, and I am excited for it, but it is going to require a lot of my attention, which means I may have less time for the YouTube videos than I did before. So what I wanted to go over here is this article. It says right to repair law to come in this summer. And this here is from BBC News. It says appliances such as fridges, washing machines, and TVs should last longer and be cheaper to run under new rules. Ministers have confirmed that from the summer, consumers will have a right to repair on the goods they buy. They are keeping a promise to implement EU rules aimed at cutting energy and bills and reducing the need for new materials. Many consumers have complained that goods don't last long enough, then can't be fixed in the home. Manufacturers will be legally obligated to make spare parts or products available to consumers for the first time, a new legal right for repairs. The aim of the new rules is to extend the lifespan of products by up to 10 years, and officials estimate that higher energy efficiency standards will save consumers an average of £75 a year on bills over their lifetimes. They talk about it protecting the environment, a new upcoming energy efficiency framework. They say we must stop using and disposing quite so much. We must take action, and they have energy labels. Now, I want to discuss this because there's good in there and there's bad in there. And I don't want right to repair, at the very least, the right to repair that I push for, to be confused with something that may be unfair. Now, I think it's great that governments are looking at this and finally taking it serious as an issue, because it is an issue. The idea that when you purchase something, we're getting so close to a point where the parts in it are serialized and matched, so that even if you replaced a broken part with an OEM original, it will not work without the manufacturer making good on it. That's bullshit, and that needs to change. That's bad. And I'm glad that they're pushing back against it. I'm glad that they're focusing on it, even if right now it's only happening for appliances and televisions. Now, one thing that I want to make clear here is the parts availability. I want to clarify this a little bit because I'm for all the bombastic yelling and screaming kind of stuff I do and getting mad when something bad happens, I think that what I'm asking for is reasonable. I'm not asking for parts to be made available for 10 years because that, in my opinion, is a genuine burden on many of the manufacturers. So if you have a chipset, if you have, let's say, a Core 2 Duo chipset to an 820-2879 motherboard for an A1278 from 2010, I'm not asking that you buy enough of that chip that you still have CPUs available for that device in 2020 or 2021. I'm not asking you to make the parts available for 10 years. I'm asking, make them available at all. Or, if you don't wish to make them available, don't go to LG and say, don't sell panels to Lewis. Don't go to Intersil or Renesas and say, if Lewis wants to buy a spool of 10,000 ISL 9240, don't make it for him. That's what I'm asking for. I'm not asking that the parts be made available for a certain period of time. Now, why am I making this distinction? It's fairly easy for them to tell their supplier, for them to tell Texas Instruments, if someone wants to buy a chip that gets used in a MacBook, and they want to buy it for themselves from a Texas Instruments vendor, let them do it. That's no skin off Apple's back. It doesn't require anything out of them other than that they not be dicks. Whereas saying that the part needs to be available for 10 years means that they need to buy up enough stock and anticipate what people are going to need 10 years into the future when it comes to stuff that's constantly changing. Again, this isn't like brake pads for my bike where the same brake pads from 15 years ago are virtually unchanged today and a lot of the stuff is the same. We're talking about processors and charging chips. This technology comes out, it gets used, then it gets updated. The last year's chip is no longer used. We're using this year's chip and so on and so forth. It's not something where parts are really the same over long periods of time. Now, when it comes to appliances, perhaps you could save parts for appliances because they're cheap and the appliance doesn't really change much from year to year. But when it comes to televisions, we are, in that point, talking about pretty much a computer that's attached to a screen. I'm not asking that the part be available for 10 years. I would settle for it being available at all. This is the way it works in our industry. So, for instance, I still have B154 PW01s in my basement. That is a screen to a 2006 MacBook Pro. So when that machine was popular, we bought a bunch of screens and we charged enough money that there was a profit margin when repairing it. When that machine there's virtually no parts left, I have a choice there. I can stop offering repairs for it, or I can buy enough screens to estimate how many I am going to use. And this typically follows a curve. So once the device is new, the part is not available at all. I can't fix it. Once the device starts to get a little bit older, then the part comes available. I can buy it, but it usually costs me a lot of money to buy it. But it's worth it because the device itself, it's still worth $2,000 at that point, so people don't care if it costs them, $300 or $500 to fix their screen. Then, once the device starts to get older, the part starts to get cheaper. And then I can charge people less money, maybe like $100 or $200 or something. Now, once the part stops being made entirely, I can stock up on it, and then I own them all, but now you can start charging a little bit more because it's scarce. Again, if you only have 20 of this screen left, you're only going to be able to do this job maybe 20 more times, so it's not like you're going to give it away very cheaply, because you're going to be turning people down at some point anyway. You might as well turn some of them down for the fact that the price was $300 instead of $200. And eventually the repair will die off. Once the worth of the device becomes worth the same as the cost of the part, then that's no longer viable, and people stop fixing it outside of cannibalizing other computers. And usually that's going to start happening at the 9 or the 10 or the 12-year point. So once the device gets to a certain age, then at that point, the only way people are fixing it is by cannibalizing parts out of other machines. It doesn't make sense for someone to go to AU Optronics and say, we need you to retool your factory to make fluorescent backlit screens again, because we need to comply with this law so that people can fix their device. That's not something that makes sense. We have long moved past fluorescent backlit screens. They're not good to manufacture. They're not good to own. They're not good to dispose of. LED is better there. So the thing that makes sense is to allow people in the free market to purchase these screens, to purchase these chipsets, to purchase these parts so that they can then supply it to the ecosystem of independent repair people and consumers. That is something that makes sense, and that's a business model. That's the kind of thing that Rossmann Supply used to do back in the day. I used to find parts that were rare or for things that people would want to fix into the future. I would buy it, and I'd be making a bet. I'm buying these screens for $72 a piece, and if nobody wants to buy them, I'm now stuck with 20,000 of inventory. But if people really want to fix that into the future, I could take that $72 screen, sell it for $100 to $120 a piece, and now I'm making $30 to $50 for a job that doesn't require any labor, and I'm providing a value to the market, which is that I'm allowing people to fix their old devices because I stockpile this old stuff. And that's something that many companies do. I used to do it. Asset Genie does it. LaptopScreen.com does it. A bunch of companies do this. And then we all compete with each other, which is what keeps the price from going up exponentially, so that I can't tell you to fix this machine, the screen is $800. I can't do that because at that point, Asset Genie, LaptopScreen.com, and every other company is going to come in. So there is an ecosystem in place to ensure that products are fixable long term. The one thing that is keeping us from being able to do it is buying parts at all. So I don't think that the legislation itself needs to have written in it saying parts must be made available for 10 years. Because in order for the part to be made available that long, now that burden is on the manufacturer. If that burden is now on the manufacturer has to start taking in the job of being a speculator. How many people are going to want to fix this? Because again, there is risk. You're either going to wind up selling too many, which means you're not in compliance with the law because you've sold so many screens after it went out of production, or sold this many motherboards or this many CPUs that you're now not in compliance with the law, or you're going to buy too many, in which case at some point there will be zero demand for this part and you will be selling it below its actual cost just to get it out of there. And that cost is then going to be built into the price of the product, because companies are not going to choose to profit less. They're just going to build it into the cost of doing business. What I think is fair to do is say you have to make these parts available, and you're not allowed to tell Intersil or LG or AU Optronics or anybody else that they're not allowed to sell to independent service centers. Independent service centers and independent parts companies are 110% going to jump in on this. If we're allowed to buy stuff, if Asset Genie can go up to LG without having to deal with any backroom, backdoor deal bullshit and be able to purchase 10,000 screens, they're going to do it because they know that once every other company runs out of stock of that $50 screen, once they're the only company left, now they can charge $140 for it. So there's an incentive built into the system for all of these independent parts companies and independent repair shops to stock up. There's an incentive to take the risk to purchase these parts that may expire worthless if there's no demand for them, because there is a chance of them being worth something. There's a lot of companies that'll do that, and they'll buy up chipsets, they'll buy up screens, they'll buy up all sorts of stuff. But what's needed for that to happen is for us to be able to buy them at all. We need to be able to buy them. And the problem right now is not that the part is not made available for 10 years. The problem right now is that the part is not made available at all. So when it comes to, let's say, an ISL 9240 to an A1990 MacBook, I'm not complaining about the fact that in 2030 I'm not able to get the chip. I'm complaining about the fact that in 2021 I can't get the chip, and this is being sold right now. That's my problem. And I think what would be fair would be saying, listen, Apple, if you're going to charge $2,000 or $3,000 for a board on a $2,000 or $3,000 computer, I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm not even asking you to supply the chip. But you can't tell Renesas and Intersil that they're not allowed to sell this chip to anybody but you. That's bullshit. We can't do that. Now, where I think it would be overstepping our bounds as a movement when it comes to right to repair is saying, Apple, you now have to become a chip distributor. Not only do you have to become a chip distributor, but you need to have that part on the market for 10 years. So you need to anticipate for every single device you release how many parts people are going to ask for to purchase from you for 10 years. If you, Apple, purchase too few parts and people still have demand to repair this product 8 or 9 years in and you don't have them in stock, we're going to fine you. However, if you purchase, let's say, too many parts, well, you now have, 80,000 or 800,000 or $8 million worth of parts in inventory that are completely worthless to you that you have to take a loss on. And honestly, as much as I dislike Apple, I think that's kind of unfair. So I wanted to make that distinction, and I'm sure there's probably going to be a little bit of pushback on this, probably because I didn't do a good job of explaining myself. I wasn't in a video making mood when I did this, but admittedly I've been putting off making this video for 4 days now, and I still keep getting emails on it. I don't think I did a great job of explaining myself here. But the idea here is I think it's totally fair to tell manufacturers, if you don't want to make parts available, at the very least, the people you're buying them from, you can't tell them that they can't sell to us. Because I know that they want to sell to us. I know that they would love to take our money. They just can't because of Apple. I think that it's fair to tell them you can't stop them from selling to other people. What I think is unfair, to some extent, is saying not only do you have to make the part available, but you have to make that part available for 10 years, which means that it's now your job to speculate on what the demand will be over the course of 10 years. Because if you make too few available, you're in violation of the law. If you make too many available, now maybe Apple paid $60 a screen for a bunch of screens, and once 10 years pass, they can't even sell that screen for $20 because the device at that point is worth $20. Let's say you bought the screen and you're the manufacturer and you need to save that screen for 10 years. Let's say it's an LP133WX1TLA1 for an A1181 MacBook. The A1181 MacBook at this point in time on eBay goes for $60 to $120 when it works. So once 10 years have passed, you're not going to be able to sell that screen that you purchased for $120 for $120 because the actual laptop, the entire worth of the device is $120. So that is now a non-economically viable repair. So for them to even break even on selling that part, they are going to have to sell it for the worth of the device. the manufacturer is not going to do that because nobody's going to buy it, which means they're going to have to now sell that part that they paid $120 for after the 10-year mark just to liquidate their inventory at $90, $60, or $30. $30 would put that as the point at which that would be an economically viable repair, because to make it an economically viable repair, the part cost needs to be most 30 to 50% the cost of the actual value of the device. So the manufacturer is not only going to have to tie up their capital for 10 years by keeping parts in stock for that time, but they're also, at the end of it, most likely going to lose money on those parts. Having the manufacturer be responsible for the part being available for 10 years directly from the manufacturer of the product, that's something that, even as much as I dislike Apple, I find that to be incredibly unfair. And now this is something that the market will ensure happens. Now, this is something that in the free market, people are going to make sure happens as long as the part's available at all. Again, remember my complaint. My complaint is not that the parts are not available for 10 years. My complaint is that for a machine that came out in 2018 that's still being produced today, the A1990, I still can't buy chips to it. Like, it's not about it not being available in 2030. It's not even available right now. So what I would do when these machines came out is many companies like myself and Asset Genie and LaptopScreen.com and all those individuals, they speculate because there's a chance to make money. So for instance, when the original A1466 came out, screens weren't available for 3 years. Once the LP133W4P1 TJA was available, I bought them by 200, 300, 400 at a time because I was able to get it for $72, and customers were willing to pay $325 for the repair, and they were happy because it was so much cheaper than everybody else. So I'd buy these screens for $72, be able to do the repair for $325. People are very, very happy. I'm able to make money. I'm also taking a risk there because those screens may go bad. If they go bad outside the warranty period, I'm not able to use them. I just have to e-waste them in their junk. Also, there's the chance when I buy that much, in order to be able to be a customer of one of LG's brokers, when I have to buy 1,000 or so at a time, there's a chance that that I have them for so long that they're useless. So for instance, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, a very sore point for me in my business, I still have B154 PW01s in the basement. Those screens go to an A1150 MacBook Pro. Nobody wants A1150 MacBook Pro screen repair. No one. I have new screens that I paid full price for, and it's been over 10 years now. I bought so many of them anticipating that this repair would go into the future that I still have them in stock to this very day. So there are many people, there are many other businesses in the marketplace that are going to speculate and buy these parts up when they're available in order to ensure that people in repair shops have the ability to fix it later on. And the reason they're going to do that is because there's money in it for them. Sometimes they're going to win. They're going to buy the pile of $72 screens they could turn into $325 and be happy. Sometimes they're going to buy the pile of $100 screens that they can't sell to anybody because nobody wants an A1150 MacBook repair in 2021. Sometimes you win some, you lose some, and it winds up being a wash in the end. But my point is that there are many companies. There is an entire ecosystem that's already built that regulates itself in a great way to ensure that parts are made available for 10 years, hell, for 15 years if you want. If there's a way for Asset Genie or LaptopScreen.com to make money off of this, you bet your ass they're going to try their best to ensure that these parts are made available as long as humanly possible. It starts with making them available at all. So we've gone from one extreme to the other. We've gone from one extreme of parts are not made available at all to anybody, anytime. We have to scrounge and dumpster dive as much as we can to find stuff that we're probably not supposed to be able to buy to begin with, to the other extreme. The manufacturer has to make them available for 10 years, which is not only going to be incredibly costly, but it's also going to wind up being incredibly wasteful because it's going to require that they buy up more than the 10-year amount, which means at some point there's going to be parts of it left available that nobody's going to want to buy from them, even for what the actual manufacturer paid for it. So I think that there's something in the middle there. So no parts available at all, you must make them available 10 years. How about we start with something that's reasonable for all parties involved? You make parts available, or even more reasonable, you don't tell your vendor that they can't sell to us. Don't tell Texas Instruments they can't sell me a CD3217. Don't tell AU Optronics that they can't sell me a B154 PW04. And then the Asset Genies and the Rossmann Supplies and the Rossmann Repairs and the Laptop Screens and the Vivo Technologies and everybody else, they'll all stockpile these parts because every one of them knows there's a chance that I'll be able to make a greater profit once it's discontinued, selling this part I paid $30 for $60. And in order to keep and what's going to keep them in check to ensure that, Vivo technology doesn't say, well, this screen's going to be $500 now, is going to be Asset Genie and everybody else competing on price to keep the price down, but simultaneously they all want to be the last one that has them in stock, but just enough that they don't lose their shirt. There's a beautiful ecosystem in place to ensure that parts are made available. And what we need is not to make a mandate that the part be available for 10 years from the manufacturer, just make them available at all. It'll be on us. It'll be the repair shops and the repair company suppliers. It'll be the Rock Autos and the AutoZones of the world. It'll be their responsibility to use the amount of capital that they have available and to buy these parts, to stock them and make them available to everybody in the repair community as well as end consumers. But I think it's a little bit unfair to make that to put that on the manufacturer. And again, I fucking hate myself some Apple, but I also want to be. I try to judge people based on the standards that I wish to be judged on. I strongly believe that if the manufacturers stop restricting the part suppliers from selling parts to people like us, that the free market will more than make sure that those parts are available 10 years in, because you're going to have the hoarders, you're going to have the record collectors, you're going to have the people like me that are crazy, that remember all their model numbers, that actually buy up a bunch of a part because they know that when nobody else has it, they'll be able to sell it for a considerably better markup. So I remember when screens used to come out, my purchase price for a B156XW04, XW02 would be something like $35, and I'd see this thing on eBay for $41 in free shipping. There's no margins there when it's popular, but once it's rare, then the margins start to go up. So people are going to make these parts available. They're going to make sure they're available for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, hell, 30 years if possible. There's a profit motive there to make sure that that happens. All I'm asking, make the parts available at all. So I've probably repeated myself in this video about 90 times. It's something that's really weird. I've been doing YouTube videos now. At this point, joined here in 2012. It's been 9 years at this point, and I still repeat myself nonstop. It's something that I haven't really been able to get better at. It's weird because it shows up in all my video comments, and I know I'm doing it as I'm doing it, and for some reason I can't change it. But I'm going to end this video now because at this point I'm completely rambling. Going to finish my work. I got a lot more stuff left to do today, and yeah, I'm pretty excited about all the stuff coming up ahead. I'm honestly thrilled. There's a bunch of stuff on the horizon, but in order to get all that stuff done, I got to do a lot of planning, a lot of organizing, a lot of meetings, a lot of information I got to take in, and this is going to be a good year and a half. I assure you, this is going to be a great year and a half of Right to Repair. See you all in the next video. Bye now.